Okay, how's it going, atmosphere? So, great. In case you guys were still recovering from the before party yesterday, I'm not Seth Vargo, right? There's been a change to a schedule. I will try to keep the bio really, really short, okay? So my name is Pawel Bartusch, and I'm with Bank BPH, which is still part of GE Capital Group, right? And in Bank BPH, I actually have like two jobs, right? So I lead IT infrastructure, architecture and strategy function. And with my second hat on, I'm the guy behind all things DevOps, right? I am also an aspiring chef-style DevOps Kung Fu practitioner, right? And I think I'm the only person at this conference so far presenting the stuff of a Windows-based machine, right? Which brings me smoothly to my next point. I am a horse, right? And I believe you guys all know that thing about, unicorns and horses, right? Unicorns being that cloud-native, agile organizations like Netflix or Allegro, for that matter, right? They spin up and down machines all the time. They push to the prod like gazillion times a day, right? They move at the speed of light. And on the flip side, you've got horses, those waterfally, big, large enterprises, change-averse, right? Those large enterprises that all too often carry a load of legacy processes, legacy culture, and legacy systems. And just to be precise, when I say legacy, I do not mean AIX, not at all. So our story is one of a horse trying to be more unicorny, if you will, right? So it was not a case of, a VP reads a book and the next day the whole organization is freaking DevOps, right? Not at all. There was a whole bookshelf behind that change, and the good news is that finally the VP read the book and he actually liked it very much. And before I go any further, there's one disclaimer that I have to make, and it comes as a quote from Moby Dick, and I have shamelessly stolen that idea from my good friend Justin Arbuckle, who's chief architect and VP for EMEA at Chef. And the thing is, true places are never on the map, right? So whoever is coming up here telling their story, right, and what they have done, myself included, if they tell you that what worked for them would work for you guys, that the guy is obviously talking nonsense, right? You have to check what works in your particular situation and in your organization. And to quote Adam Jacobs' talk from this year's ChefConf, right? Principles are the same, forms are shared, but practices are unique. Okay, so I've been doing this talk for a year now, I guess, speaking mainly inside Bank BPH and the wider GE Capital Group. And each time I was retuning and changing the delivery to meet the expectations of the audience, right? So it was agile transformation story for agile people. It was lean startup-y kind of thing for lean and product people. It was infrastructure as code for the IT guys. And when we got to speak to our CEO, it was business value all along, right? But coming up here, I knew that I need to find this one new perspective that would kind of bind this whole thing together, this linchpin factor for this whole story. And I came to this conclusion really quickly that it's all about people, right? So let me tell you our story from the people perspective and how small group of people manage, to kind of change the way organization works and how they manage to affect even larger group of people, right? And to kind of, I believe, change the very DNA of the organization. Okay, so it all started with our friends abroad. So with Justin, with Rich, with Rick, right? So these guys, they have started this huge project inside GE Capital that was aiming to change the way applications are being produced and maintained, right? And they had executive on board, they have sponsorship, they had resources, stuff like that. And we've learned from them about this whole DevOps thing. But for us, back in 2013, the situation didn't look that rosy at all, right? To say that we are overloaded would be a gross understatement. We are running two huge projects. We are consolidating our data centers into Krakow, and that meant like moving our entire hardware estate from Gdańsk across Poland, right? And then we are also shifting our entire user base onto Citrix. And to top it off, we started to see some production stability issues, and I will get back to this production stability thing later. Now, when I was talking to the guys inside the teams, right, one thing that stood out is that everyone was like screaming for a chance to focus, right? We all knew that we should be focusing on that stuff that matter, to find the root cause of the problems that we are having, and that we should, optimize at the very core, but we were too busy firefighting. And what made this whole situation even more frustrating it was the fact that we knew about this DevOps thing, right? We knew about this new tools and techniques, right? But we simply didn't have time to try to apply it in our organization. And our organization looked like a typical horsey style organization, right? So heavily siloed, right? Not only we've been separated between development and operations, we also had operations further separated into two silos, one being infrastructure and the other one being application operations. Now, this whole stuff started inside the infrastructure group, right? And what do large enterprises do when they need to solve a problem? They form a team, right? So this is exactly what we have done. We have pulled out some of the best people that we had, and we have formed this new team. And the goal for the team was two things. One, try to regain focus. And the other one, try to apply that DevOps thing and check if it works in our organization. And just note one thing, right? We didn't name this thing DevOps. And the reason for such a action was twofold. First thing was that it was widely considered an anti-pattern to use DevOps as your job title. I don't think it is anymore, but it was like that back in the day. And the second thing was that besides just a handful of people inside this team, no one really knew what this goddamn DevOps thing was after all, right? So we went for the second best option, which was the cloud. So we aimed to regain focus, right? And unless you've been living under some rock for the last few years, right, there are like two options, right, that pop up immediately if you search for a technique for the operating model to regain, to have focus in your job, right? And one was Kanban. And on the face of it, Kanban looked pretty simple, right, and pretty nice. You just map out your flow, you start acting according to the flow, you should be good, right? But there is one slight problem, because how do you achieve, this focus inside Kanban system? You set your WIP limit, right? And what would that mean? That would mean that I would have to go to my boss, hi boss, right? And I would have to say, you know what, your best people would be only working on like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, but limited number of tasks at the time, right? And just remember that we were trying to build that thing from the bottoms up, right? We didn't yet have the credibility, right? So this message would not be the right message to convey up the chain of command, right? So we have decided to go for the second option, which was Scrum, right? And I believe everyone knows Scrum. And in Scrum, our way to achieve focus was obvious, right? So we are going to work in sprints. There will be sprint scope, right? We will concentrate on it, right? We'll deliver value at the very end, and we will demo the results. So we went for Scrum. But we really wanted this thing to be something serious, right? So we have created this split, this capacity split. So we have said that we will dedicate 50% of each sprint resources into finding and fighting that very root cause of the problems, right? Into that hardcore optimization things. And 30% would go to this DevOps discovery process, if you will, and then 20% would be held as a buffer in case of any incident and, helping out the other teams. Now, we have to remember that we have weakened the other teams, pulling out these people. So we wanted this thing to be serious. We wanted this commitment to be serious. So we asked, heads of these other teams to act as product owners for this backlog of tasks targeting this 50% capacity allocation. And it created this very nice, very interesting bi-directional bond, right? Because on one hand, we are absolutely transparent about the stuff that we are doing, right? These guys could see it and they could prioritize it. And on the other hand, because they had to define it and to prioritize it, they got involved. So it was their first move, to move outside of our comfort zone, sort of, right? And so we started, working in Scrum, right? So we did our first sprint. It was great. We thought we were awesome. Then there was this other sprint. It was just ugly. It was absolute disaster. We started learning. We have applied regular retrospectives, right? We've learned about benefits of smaller batch size, right? So we went from a month-long sprint time to a 2 weeks sprint time, right? And thanks to that, we have doubled our velocity, and we applied this religious focus, on the sprint focus and on delivering on our commitment. And then this 30% bucket went to just 3 things. First and foremost, it was Chef, right? And if you're going to ask me why Chef, answer is quite easy. It has been chosen for us by our friends on the corporate side, right? But it turned out to be a great decision, and not only because it's a great product, it's because this awesome community that stands behind that product, and because Chef is just this kind of rock and roll company that you just love to work with, right? So we have learned Chef, and it was quite a nice journey. And the other thing was versioning our infrastructure configuration. Not a very typical thing to do for a horsey style organization, right? And the third thing was Jenkins, which we use as our orchestration engine, right? and we demoed a lot. So we set out, a whole series of experiments, right? And we were celebrating each step, right? And we were demoing like all the time, right? And you can see the picture here, Pawel and Waldek, they are happy about our first Windows server built using Chef, right? And the other screenshot is from a demo that we did when we kind of created this, 11 Chef-built Apache servers, right? To draw this nice Angry Birds picture and to describe how VMware, Chef, Git, how all of these elements interact. So there was this nice demo when we were shooting, Angry Birds, each of them carrying particular OS type, right, against our VMware infrastructure, right? And after like 2, maybe 3 sprints, it turned out that we made it, right? So we were massively successful. We regained our focus, and we were delivering some significant value there, right? And on this DevOps discovery front, we were also, learning, and there was new stuff that we could present each sprint. And I can tell you right now that this was the single most fragile moment in our whole transformation story. And the reason was, you ain't gonna believe it, it was because we were having fun, right? We were so happy about this 30%. We were so happy about learning this new stuff. We were, smiling all the time, that it has created some kind of resentment inside the organization, right? The feeling was like, come on, these guys are having fun, right? They were about to leave the organization. They were experiencing burnout, and now they are having fun, right? And there is no obvious value of having fun, right? So instead of dedicating this 30% into this DevOps discovery, you guys should be doing like 100, 200% just firefighting with us, right? So it was fragile, and back then, my job, beside my daytime job as IT infrastructure architecture, was just 2 things. One, I was providing air cover for the team, right, to allow them to retain the focus that they have regained, right? And the second thing was that I went walking across the open spaces of our organization. I was talking to everyone that was willing to listen to me, and even if they were not willing to listen to me, I was still preaching, continuous delivery to the development people, infrastructure as code to IT operations. I was all over security people, trying to buy them into this vision of compliance thanks to Chef, this kind of stuff. And there was just one goal, right? We wanted these people to buy into this vision, and we wanted to create this network of kind of satellite dishes, right? Because we wanted these people to scan the environment for us and to provide us with an opportunity, right? For the right project to spot that we could apply our techniques and prove that this thing can bring really business value. And this opportunity came in a form of a project that had a very tight deadline. It was imposed by the regulators, and it required massive processing of data. And because the variety of data was also huge, we knew from the very beginning that it will take a lot of time to eventually come up with the right algorithm, right? And we knew that we will make a lot of mistakes, developing that algorithm, right? So the whole thing was about testing. And I don't know about your organization, but in my horsey world, testing is nothing like this picture. Because we have this tightly coupled legacy architecture, right? We rely on several big environments containing large amounts of data and dozens of applications. And because of that, to bring such an environment to a production-like state, to refresh it, how we refer to it, it takes time. And because this process is partially manual, there is a lot of mistakes, and it extends the process even longer, right? So we have estimated that it would take like 20 refreshes each time during the life cycle of this project, right? And each would take like a week, stuff like that, right? So there would be no way for us to finish this stuff on time. But to do it, we knew that we would have to go beyond, our comfort zone, right? So we had to extend, right? To reach outside this new team, we had to include the DBA, we had to include, the guys from application operations, we had to include the development people, right? And we have done this, and these people are still with us. Some of them are in the audience. They are not transferred to the team, but they act as the ambassadors for our cause, right? And the thing is that we actually, at the beginning, we thought that we will just automate this environment provisioning using Chef. But thanks to this guy, Krzysiek, the DBA, that joined the team, he told us about this flashback feature in Oracle that we didn't know about. You just set your restore point, and you can get back to it in a matter of minutes, right? So we did exactly this way, right? We didn't automate the whole provisioning using Chef. So we kind of faked the whole solution because we were associated with Chef, right? We were Chef people to the organization. But the goal was to just prove that this approach works. So it was kind of, lean startup-y approach to the things. So we have automated the refresh, right? And we have treated this as minimum viable product number 1. And the next thing that we tried, we took on the software installation process, because up to that point it was all manual. A software developer would prepare software package, hand it over to the operations person, and the operations person would just install it manually. So we bloody automated this stuff as well. And the next thing we took on, it was the big thing, we have automated end-of-day processing, because it would be big for this project, it would happen once a day, and it would typically take all the data, regardless of the need. So we have automated all of the batch processing, and what we have done, we have handed over these 3 features back to the development side of the house and to the business, right? For them to do it. We have taken IT operations out of the equation. And the result was that we have achieved like 300% productivity improvement in this project. And if it was not for this solution, this project would have no chance to be finished on time. And this was the moment, right, when this whole DevOps stuff really took off in our organization, because we have proved that we can build a solution that actually brings value. And now let me tell you, this was the second most fragile moment of the entire transformation, right? Because right after we had this success, we had this whole lineup of people waiting at our doors, asking to help them solve their problems, right? And let's be serious. We cannot automatically, overnight, change a tightly coupled legacy architecture into microservices heaven, right? It ain't gonna happen, right? So we had to say no a lot. But we knew that we are ready to go for the production environment, right? We knew this thing is stable. We knew that our competencies are good enough. We were just waiting for the right opportunity to do so. But back in the real world, I told you about that production stability, and that we will get back to that later, right? This production stability really backfired at this point in time. And there was a reason for that, because the business had been going through a series of, acquisitions and divestitures. Tackling technical debt was never a priority. But at this time, we had to act on it, right? ASAP. So we didn't actually had time, to start up a big project that would last for like months and would deliver, results in like a year. So since we had this operating model of working in sprints, the organization turned out to us asking to scale the model that we have applied, right? And to scale it across the organization to stabilize production. And this is what we did. We have applied a scaled agile framework, right? And we had like 3, maybe 4 teams, 50 people all together working day in, day out in this model, stabilizing the production environment. And it was inside this very initiative that came our big thing, right? Because the guys present in the audience somewhere came up, the guys from the middleware group came up with this idea to completely rebuild our key middleware platform, our enterprise services bus, right? And we wanted to do it using Chef. We wanted to automate the whole thing. Now we knew to do that, we have to kill the silo culture, right? We had to include the people from all the departments of our organization, right? So this is exactly what we did, right? We have involved everyone, development, applications, Q&A, because we wanted to test the provisioning process. We had architects, we have the guy, running the stabilization program, coordinating the whole stuff, right? And the middleware people, of course. And we have achieved this goal, right? So we have coded the entire platform using Chef. Server layer, WebLogic cluster layer, and application configuration layer, right? And here I want to touch on one thing that we use. We have this, what we have just called Developer Plus model. We came up with this name on Friday, actually, right? So we do not try to change our operations engineers into developers, right? And we do not want developers to, start managing our infrastructure. We want developers to do what they do best, right? Which is creating frameworks. And we want ops engineers to act as, subject matter experts, right? And we want them to meet halfway in this operational coding area, right? So what we have done, and I attribute a lot of this success to this model, we have planted Waldek, the guy sitting over there with like 15 years of Java coding experience, who previously worked as infrastructure architect, inside, this DevOps team, right? And he was, teaching the guys how to code properly, and then he didn't get this, whole knowledge about infrastructure. So we had Waldek and Łukasz initially, and then other guys, Szymon and Grzesiek, right, providing him with, ops knowledge, right? And this was one of the reasons why this stuff was so successful, and it took off, right? We have gone live with this solution on October last year, and it has been rock solid ever since, and it's just working fine, right? And not sure if you guys seen that, but we had only like vertical solutions, right? So we had this testing environment over there, we had this, core middleware component here, right? But we wanted to go for horizontal scale, right? So we wanted each and every operating system in our company to be built using Chef, right? So we've learned our lesson, right? We did not get back to this Angry Birdie kind of parallel, right? Instead, we went for the real thing, right? So we have created this thing that we called OS Blaster, right? So each and every, authorized engineer could just shoot his operating system against our, VMware infrastructure, right, and have this operating system up and running. And we have done this, right? We just automated that using Jenkins and Jenkins workflow plugin. By the way, if you don't know this tool, just check it out. It's cool, right? And since January, right, every operating system in our organization is built using that very solution, and it takes like below 10 minutes to build a Linux server, below an hour to get a Windows server, and 2 to 3 hours to build a Citrix machine, right? And we have like around 300 boxes, not boxes, but VMs built that way. And there came the really big thing, right? Because we combined the scale of horizontal scaling and the complexity of the vertical solution. Because we had to rebuild our entire infrastructure serving our branches, right? And this guy's work of Citrix, and it was built on Windows 2003, and we have to upgrade to Windows 2008, right? So we decided to do it, automating the entire stuff with Chef, right? And the scale was huge. It was more than 2,000 users, most critical users in the bank, because these are the people that that talk to our customers day in, day out, right? And this infrastructure supports them each day, right? And it's close to 100 VMs, right? And it's a complete environment. It's not just one operating system, right? It's a desktop with all of the applications that these people need, right? And we decided to, reapply all of these best practices that we have gathered so far, right? So we have produced that using sprints, right? It took us like 2, maybe 3 sprints to do it, a month and a few weeks. We gathered, representatives from other teams to sit with our team actually, right, to build this solution with them, and then they moved back to the original team spreading the knowledge, right? And finally, it took us less than 5 hours to deploy that stuff into production, right? And let me tell you a dirty secret here. We had an outage like several weeks or maybe days ago, right? And the outage was not inside this solution, right? It's outside of that. But because of that outage, we had to check like configuration on every machine. And we had this opportunity, if we wanted to just rebuild the bloody thing from the ground up, right? From scratch in less than 5 hours. We didn't go for this solution, right? But we have this luxury of acting, knowing that we have this, plan B if it would be needed. So wrapping the things up, right? Our success factors, the team, right? It wouldn't have been possible without the guys, right? And you guys seen the pictures, so if you want to, there's a test, right? If you were paying attention to the pictures. If you want some more details, just pick up these people, pick up their brains. They can share all the details of the technical solution, right? The other thing is this developer plus model, right? I believe it's like 60% of the success, right? That we can have, this effective way of collaborating between, development knowledge and operations knowledge, and then this lean startup-y kind of, approach, right? So starting with MVP number 1 and extending, hunting opportunity and building credibility, right? Based on that. And right now, our focus turns more towards, continuous delivery kind of thing, right? We work with the development people to build continuous delivery pipeline. So if you guys like this talk, right, and if you want to listen to the next chapter of this story, just hit the green button, leaving the room, right? And then maybe we'll get invited for the next year's conference to share our continuous delivery journey, the next chapter. And that would be all. Thanks. Questions?
So by people talking to each other, you mean heads of departments talking to each other, or
No.
just...
No.
Okay, but wouldn't it create just a mess? Because like if there are 50 people, everybody talking to each other, it's not manageable.
So it's about this safe framework, right? Because we do this, each sprint we do this planning session that takes like a day, right? Synchronizing the scope of each team doing their sprints, right? So we just make sure.
I'm sorry, maybe the question is,
Okay.
so you're solving this problem with these people, but Say if you had 5,000 people, how
I
would
wish.
you?
I got no idea. If I get to, to be running like
Okay,
5,000 people, just call me.
I'll press the green button, okay.
Oops. If I had like 5,000 people, I would be driving a Lexus, I guess.
Hi. There are a lot of people who don't like SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework. There's a fair bit of criticism about it. How really did you find it working for you?
Well, it was like we didn't have a lot of time, right? So we just needed it. If we were to get certified, of actually implementing all the thing that was described inside this book, I guess we would just fail this test, right? So we had like a week, Waldek, right, to propose a model. So I just quickly read through this book and just picked up whatever worked for us, right? And we just applied. If you wanted to test it, right, whether it's safe itself, I guess we would have failed, right? But it just worked for us. And the process of synchronizing the sprint scope, right, each month, right, and then we had one person, being in charge of the entire initiative, just all the time taking care of the synchronization among those teams. This worked for us well enough.
So how big was the initial team that you formed? These best people, you say?
You mean inside this production stabilization, right?
Yes.
I believe it was 10 plus.
10 plus, and those most skilled people from your company. How you managed to convince your boss to give you 10 plus most skilled people, 10 brands from your company?
Production was falling apart.
Lovely.
How simple is that, right? Now, to be, well, I'm serious. So we even got permission to hire some additional people, to join that team. I'm not sure if I'm authorized to actually tell you about production falling apart. And my boss is here. Okay, I think we are done. Thanks a lot.